Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm glad that you decided to join me today, and I want to ask you to remember to like and share my videos so that they can reach others. And please don't forget to subscribe to help me reach 1,000 subscribers. So let's get into today's story. If you remember, one of my last videos last week was about how the Moors conquered Spain. So now I want to talk about what happened after they took Spain. What were the next things that occurred? Let's take a look at that. So after Tariq ibn Ziyad and his army of Moors defeated the Visigoths in 711 AD, they took control of the kingdom. The name was changed to Al-Andalus, as could be seen on the first coins minted in 716 AD by the new Muslim government in their new capital city of Cordoba. The coins are called dinars, and they are inscribed in two languages, Latin and Arabic. And Al-Andalus means Vandals, or land of the Vandals. So they named their new kingdom after the Visigoths that they conquered, so to speak, just kind of referencing them in the name, meaning that they took it from the Vandals. So now we have this new Moorish kingdom of Al-Andalus on the Iberian continent, and there is now a lot of infighting and power grabbing going on. Who's going to rule this new territory? So there were a lot of rebellions and uprisings of different leaders and things like that trying to take control, and that occurred for just over 40 years. So in Al-Andalus, there's no power structure, there's no stability, and there's no leadership really to depend on. But that's not the only place that chaos is about to occur. In 747 AD, in Damascus, a revolution began. Now at this time, the caliph that was in charge of the entire Muslim kingdom was Caliph Hisham. He was from the Umayyad family. But his leadership was about to be opposed because one of the local leaders that he had appointed, Abu, led the revolution. So Abu, with some of his local troops, went into battle with the Umayyad family, who was the royal family at the time. And he won the battle, and he became the Abbasid Caliphate. So he became the new caliphate. And now that he was in control, he began a purge of all of the Umayyad family members. So the Abbasids sent riders out to track down and slaughter every Umayyad descendant. Now, Prince Abd Al-Rahman I was the grandson of Caliph Hisham, and he was a teenager at the time the rebellion began that overthrew his family. And he was one of the lone survivors. He fled with just a few close family members, and they headed towards the Euphrates River. But he was discovered there, so he had to abandon his relatives, including his young infant son. So he fled further west and traveled over the next few years. He traveled with a Greek freedman named Bedr. So for the next few years, he lived incognito with Bedr. They traveled through Palestine and into North Africa, trying to find sanctuary anywhere he could. He found refuge with a close family friend and ally, but he was betrayed. This friend of his family began to fear that his kingdom and his people would be attacked by taking in the prince. So he turned on him, forcing Prince Rahman to have to leave that territory and continue traveling on. So he did just that. He and Bedr continued traveling west, getting assistance from the Berber tribes of North Africa, whom his mother had belonged to. He eventually arrived in the far northern corner of North Africa, where the Strait of Gibraltar sits. So the year is now 755 AD, and here Prince Rahman finds himself as far away from home as he possibly could get to try to avoid what was his fate if he were caught. So now he's there in North Africa, standing at the Straits of Gibraltar, aware of the new kingdom, Al-Andalus, that had been taken under his grandfather's rule. And what he decided to do was send Bedr into Al-Andalus to see if it could become his new home. Although the territory had been conquered and taken from the Visigoths, there was still all of that turmoil within going on, the infighting for power, so on. But Bedr sent good word back that it could be a place for him to make his new home. So after assessing the situation across the straits, Prince Aman travels to the new kingdom and arrives in the city of Al-Munakkar in 755 AD. Now, word of his arrival spread fast, and some were not pleased with his arrival, specifically Governor Yusuf al-Fihri. But Prince Rahman had many supporters in the area because his grandfather and his father had been sending troops specifically from Syria to the area over the time period of it being conquered and occupied. So he had many supporters there. And he decided, after seeing the political state of the new kingdom, that he should be in control. So he had his supporters join him, and they quickly conquered the cities of Seville and Malaga. And then they traveled on to the capital city of Corboda, and they besieged the capital city. Now, at this point, Prince Abd Al-Rahman's army was exhausted after their battles and conquests. Now, Governor Yusuf al-Fihri had some troops with him, and he was in another part of the kingdom during the time that Prince Rahman was taking control of some of the cities. He was over in another part of the kingdom squashing a rebellion that was going on. So he and his army arrives back at the city of Corboda, and there Prince Rahman and his army are there as well. So the siege of Corboda begins. Now, Prince Rahman's army was not just exhausted, but they were also starving. So Governor Fihri started having lavish feasts every day, hoping to tempt Prince Rahman's supporters to defect to his side, but it didn't work. So the governor then offered a truce with Prince Rahman, offering his daughter in marriage to the prince. But the prince rejected the truce and the offer of marriage. So we now have this siege, and we now have no agreement. So they eventually went to battle, and Prince Rahman's army defeated the governor's army decisively, and he was able to conquer and capture the capital city of Corboda. He declared himself the Amir in 756 AD. The rest of Al-Andalus was eventually conquered as well, and he soon had control of all of the new kingdom. Now, Prince Abd Al-Rahman had a stable rulership after his conquest and victory. He built public works, one of his most famous being the Mosque of Corboda, which still stands today. He also urbanized the kingdom, and he successfully defended it from invaders and rebellions. He repelled the invasion by Charlemagne when Charlemagne attempted to take Al-Andalus. And he also squashed an attempt by the Abbasid Caliphate, whom had slaughtered his family. He squashed an attempt by him to take control. Now, here's what happened when the Abbasid Caliphate tried to take control from the prince and terminate his life. In 763, the Caliph named Al-Ala ibn Mughith governor of North Africa. This also included Al-Andalus. Now, the Caliph was Al-Mansur of Abbasid. And as soon as the governor was in power, he planned an invasion of Corboda. When Prince Rahman learned of this, he left his capital city and he fortified himself within his fortress at Carmona with only a tenth of the number of soldiers that Governor Ibn Mughith had when he arrived at Carmona. So you have Prince Rahman inside of his fortress behind his gates, and you have the governor with his troops outside of the gates, and there's a long siege that ensued. So the prince is locked up. He can't get out. Governor Mughith has him pinned in, and it appears that Prince Rahman was defeated at this point. But he was not willing to go down without a fight. So in his last stand, although he was outnumbered, he opened the gates to his fortress, and he and his troops charged the Abbasid army while they were resting and defeated them with no problems. Now, Governor Mughith, because of his defeat, he was beheaded, and his head was embalmed and sent to the Al-Mansur Caliph. Now, the Caliph Al-Mansur stated upon receiving the head of his governor, I quote, he says, "Praise be to God who has put the sea between me and this devil," end quote. So now Prince Abd Al-Rahman I is now the ruler of Al-Andalus, the whole Al-Andalus. And he brings stability. He urbanizes the kingdom. He brings a lot of things into the new kingdom. And he's able to keep at bay any attempts at rebellions from within or any invaders from outside. Prince Rahman died in 788, and he had a long and prosperous reign. His son, Hisham I, succeeded him. He had two sons, and Hisham I ran his brother out of the kingdom and forced him back into North Africa so that he could take power. So he succeeded his father, and then his son succeeded him. So basically, Prince Rahman's bloodline held power for multiple generations, and then other rulers came and went after that. Some were good, some were bad. And the Moors were able in this time period to expand their kingdom. In 827 AD, they took Sicily in Italy, and they held that kingdom for a couple hundred years. And about 300 years into the rule of Al-Andalus, the Moors really began to expand out more into Europe and ruled the continent for the most part. You would find Moors in positions of kings or queens within the royal families. They were generals, they were noblemen, they were lords. So, whenever your people are spread out into other societies and they are embedded deeply in those societies at all level, that kind of gives you some power because you're able to kind of have some control over what is going on in other kingdoms by having your people embedded there. Now, the Moors held power until 1492 when they were banished from Al-Andalus, which is now Spain. But we'll get into more stories about that later. I hope you enjoyed today's story of Prince Rahman and how he took a new territory that was in chaos and brought stability and protection to it and unified it as a whole, something that they had not had from its inception for 40 years until he came along. So I want to thank you guys for watching and listening today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I will see you soon.